Have you ever noticed that moment when you don't reply right away, and instead of relief, your body tightens, like you've broken an invisible rule? You tell yourself you're just resting, just busy, just unavailable for once. Yet there's a quiet fear underneath it all that says if I stop being available, something bad will happen. Most empaths never say this out loud, but they feel it. And if that's you, you're not broken. You're patterned. By the end of this video, you'll understand what actually happens when an empath stops being available, why it feels so unsettling at first, and how to move through it without collapsing back into guilt or over-explaining. You'll also leave with a clear sentence you can use next time your body needs space, but your habits want to say yes. Here's something important to understand early on. Many empathic women don't stay available because they're endlessly generous. They stay available because somewhere along the way, availability became the currency for connection. Being reachable, responsive, emotionally present wasn't just kindness. It was safety. And here's the part no one names. Your nervous system learned that closeness depended on you being on. So when you finally step back, even gently, your body doesn't register self-care. It registers threat. That's why the guilt comes first. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your system is adjusting to a new truth. Connection doesn't require self-erasure. The day an empath stops being available is rarely dramatic. There's no announcement, no confrontation. It's subtle. You don't answer immediately. You say you can't talk tonight. You choose rest instead of rescuing. On the outside, it looks small. On the inside, it's seismic. And here's where many women get confused. They expect peace, but what they feel is anxiety, a buzzing, a sense of unease, sometimes even shame. This doesn't mean you made a mistake. It means your nervous system is detoxing from over-responsibility. And if you've never been allowed to rest without consequences, your body will protest before it relaxes. Listen closely to this reframe. Availability is not love. Availability is access. Love can exist even when access changes. But if you grew up around emotional unpredictability, your system may not know that yet. They learn that being useful kept people close. So when you step back in, old fear whispers, "I'll be forgotten, replaced, or abandoned." That fear deserves understanding, not obedience. Let me give you a scene that might feel familiar. Someone reaches out with a problem. You feel the pull in your chest to respond immediately. You notice your own fatigue, but the impulse is strong. This time, instead of rushing, you pause. You take a breath, and you hear yourself say, "I don't have the capacity for this right now." Even imagining that sentence can make your stomach clench. That reaction isn't selfishness. It's conditioning loosening. When an empath stops being available, the first thing that changes is internal. You start noticing how often you override yourself, how quickly you move toward others and away from your own needs. This awareness can feel uncomfortable, even lonely at first. But it's also the beginning of self-trust. And here's the part people don't warn you about. If you go back to overgiving just to stop the discomfort, the pattern stays intact. But if you stay with the feeling, breathe, and remind yourself that discomfort is not danger, something settles. Slowly, quietly, power returns in a way that doesn't require force. Now let's talk about what happens externally, because this is where fear often spikes. When you stop being available, some people adjust, some don't. People who care about you as a whole person may stumble, but they recalibrate. People who relied on your constant accessibility may push back, guilt you, or withdraw. This hurts, and it's also information. You're not losing connection. You're losing roles you were never meant to play forever. Being the emotional anchor, the listener, the fixer. Roles feel like love, but they're not the same thing. Bonds can survive boundaries. Roles cannot. This is often where empaths feel the urge to explain themselves endlessly. To soften where empaths feel the urge to explain themselves endlessly. To soften the boundaries so no one feels uncomfortable. Notice that urge. It comes from wanting to protect others from feelings you were once expected to manage. Instead, you might say, "I care about you, and I also need to take care of myself right now." Simple, grounded, no apology hidden inside it. Before we go further, let's slow the body down together, because regulation changes everything. Place one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Take a gentle breath in through your nose. Then, let the exhale be longer than the inhale. like you're signaling safety. As you breathe out, say quietly in your mind, I am allowed to be unavailable. Feel the support beneath you. Let your shoulders drop just a little. One more breath. Same sentence. This isn't withdrawal, it's presence without self-abandonment. When you stop being available, something else begins to emerge. At first, it might feel like emptiness because being needed took up so much space. But underneath that emptiness is something alive. Preferences, energy, a sense of self that doesn't revolve around response time. And this is where the real work begins. In the next part, we'll talk about how to handle the guilt without arguing with it, what to do when people react strongly, and how to rebuild availability in a way that doesn't cost you yourself. When you're ready, say continue. If you're still here, it means something and you knows this matters. So let's talk about the part that usually pulls empaths back into old patterns, the guilt. Not the loud kind, but the quiet, persistent feeling that says you're being selfish, dramatic, or unkind just for needing space. That voice feels convincing because it learned its lines early. And here's the truth that often brings relief. Guilt doesn't always mean you did something wrong. Sometimes it means you did something different. When you stop being available, guilt often shows up as a withdrawal symptom. Your nervous system was trained to equate self-denial with goodness. So when you choose yourself, the system protests. Not because you're harming anyone, but because you're breaking a familiar rule. Instead of arguing with the guilt, try relating to it. You might quietly say inside, I see you. You're trying to keep me safe. And then bring your attention back to your body. Notice your breath. Notice your feet on the floor. This is how you stay grounded without collapsing back into overgiving. And here's the part most people miss. You don't need to feel confident to hold a boundary. You just need to stay present. Confidence often comes later, after the nervous system learns that nothing terrible happens when you're unavailable. Now let's talk about what to do when someone reacts. Because at some point, someone will. They may sound disappointed, confused, even hurt. This is where many empaths panic and over-explain. They start offering justifications, softening the message, or taking responsibility for the other person's feelings. But there is another way. When someone pushes back, try staying simple and regulated. You might say, I understand this is hard, and my answer is still no. Or you might say, I hear you and I'm not available for that. Notice how these responses don't argue, they don't defend, they don't escalate, they anchor you in self-respect. And here's the deeper shift happening underneath. Each time you hold a boundary without rescuing, your nervous system learns that connection can survive honesty. This is how availability becomes a choice, not a reflex. Over time, you may notice something unexpected. People begin to approach you differently, more directly, more respectfully. And those who don't slowly fade into the background, not because you push them away, but because the old dynamic no longer fits. This can bring grief. Even when it's healthy, loss is still loss. So let yourself feel it without making it mean you failed. You're not becoming distant. You're becoming distant. You're becoming differentiated. There's a big difference. Let's return to your body for a moment, because embodiment makes this sustainable. If you feel that familiar pull to re-engage when you're depleted, pause and do this. Gently press your feet into the floor. Take a slow breath in. Let the exhale be longer. And say silently, I can care without caring. This small cue helps your system remember that compassion doesn't require self-sacrifice. Now, I want to invite you into a brief self-check. You can answer these quietly in your own time. When I stop being available, what part of me feels scared? What am I afraid people will think of me now? What does my body need in this moment, not what others need from me? And if I trusted that the right connections will remain, how would I show up differently? Let those questions settle. They guide you back to yourself. As you practice this, availability starts to reorganize. You may still give deeply, but it comes from fullness, not fear. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of comply. And something subtle but powerful happens. Your presence becomes clearer. Your yes carries weight because it's no longer automatic. This is what happens next when an empath stops being available. The world doesn't collapse. Relationships either adjust or reveal themselves, and you begin to feel a quiet strength that doesn't need to announce itself. It simply stands. And here with this reminder, you are not here to be endlessly accessible. You are here to be real, resourced, and whole. Rest is not retreat. Space is not abandonment. It's how you stay connected to yourself. In the next video, we'll talk about how to stay emotionally open without reopening old wounds, and how to offer empathy without losing yourself.